Welcome back to Politics Nation. The New York City mayor's race is always high-stakes political battle capable of captivating the country's attention. But few contests in the city's history have been as dramatic as this year's. An upstart Democratic socialist with an unusual name came out of nowhere to win the Democratic primary. Now he's locked in a crowded general election field that includes a colorful cast of characters, including the current Mayor Eric Adams and former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Joining me now in studio is New York State Assemblyman from Queens, Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee and frontrunner for New York City Mayor. Thank you for being here tonight. You're in the middle of a competitive race, which we'll talk about in a second. But let's start tonight with pretending you've already won. It's January 26th. You've just been sworn in, and President Trump wakes up and starts posting. He calls you a communist. He says you're on the side of the criminals and open borders. So he's sending the National Guard because otherwise he claims there won't be a new New York City anymore. What specifically do you say in response to that? What's your first move?
The first thing is you have to prepare for the inevitability of that, Rev. We cannot pretend that Donald Trump will chain himself by what is legal. He's shown that he has no regard for the law. And we can see when he did this in California, what was the playbook to fight back against him? We had the governor work with the mayor, work with the attorney general. They filed a lawsuit. A federal judge recently found in their favor that the federal government had actually engaged illegally in that deployment. Now, think about, could you imagine Andrew Cuomo working with Tish James and Kathy Hochul together to fight back against Donald Trump? What we need is an approach to leadership that understands partnership at the core of it so that we push back not on what Donald Trump wants, but for what New Yorkers need. And that would be my driving imperative.
If Donald Trump was watching right now, what would you say to him in terms of partnership? Is there any way you could see him trying to cooperate with you or you with him?
If Donald Trump wants to actually deliver on the cheaper groceries he ran his presidential campaign on, then I'm willing to work with him. If it's anything to benefit New Yorkers, I'm willing to work with him. But if it comes at the expense of these New Yorkers, no. New Yorkers deserve someone who will actually fight for them, not someone who is calling Donald Trump and asking, how can we stop the Democratic nominee, like my opponent Andrew Cuomo did.
Now, there are some voters who worry the scenario I'm laying out is more likely because of who you are, that Trump will target New York City's mayor for being young, Muslim, and on the left. They're arguing maybe it's safer to go with a more experienced politician like Governor Cuomo, who's already tangled with Trump before. What do you say to try to change their minds?
They should look at what we're getting right now. We have a mayor who's sought to collaborate with the Trump administration. And what we have gotten is that same administration reaching into our city's bank accounts and taking out $80 million. That same administration detaining and deporting a 6-year-old public school student from Jackson Heights. That same administration passing legislation that is going to cut SNAP from the hungry, throw millions of New Yorkers off of their health insurance, and all of it to provide the largest wealth transfer to the wealthiest Americans who have more money than they know what to do with. That's what collaboration has gotten us. What about we actually try fighting back?
Yesterday, you were at a town hall in Brooklyn alongside Bernie Sanders. You both appeared with AOC earlier in the day. Your campaign theme of affordability draws heavily on democratic socialist ideas as well, like building strong social safety nets and strong unions. I've seen you asked about areas where you and Trump might find common ground. But I want to ask a different question. Are there areas where you might differ from your colleagues on the left that New Yorkers should know about as they consider you for mayor?
You know, I can tell you something I've learned over the course of this campaign, which is that often when we talk about affordability, we think of it purely through the lens of, let's say, tenants, but not as much of the question of homeowners. And what I have learned over the course of this campaign is the way in which affordability is a crisis hitting each and every New Yorker. So in the same breath that I speak about freezing the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants in New York City, I also speak about taking on a broken property tax system that we know is inequitable, that we know is unfair, and yet we have done nothing about.
Let me push you on that. You made national news with your successes, Democratic mayoral primary. But one area where you underperformed was with black voters. Exit polling shows nearly double the number of black voters picked Andrew Cuomo as their first choice, although polling suggests you may have a better showing in the general. Many of these black voters are in neighborhoods like Brownsville and Flatbush, are also worried about affordability, but in different ways. They are worried about maintaining home ownership, judges ruling against them, skyrocketing property taxes, as you said. They're trying to run small businesses. How do you address their skepticism about solutions that you've been offering in the city, that they are seeing gentrifying rapidly around them, and we're losing some of black elected officials because of gentrifying?
You know, as you say, Rev, we are looking at a reverse Great Migration in New York City. We've lost about 200,000 black New Yorkers in the last few decades. And this is a moment where we can actually stand up and ensure that every New Yorker can stay in their homes. Now, at the beginning of the show, you were saying that I came out of nowhere. And that was really the experience where I was polling at 1% for a lot of this race. And I would go and I would speak to elder black New Yorkers. I spoke with a pastor. I asked him, why did you endorse Andrew Cuomo? He said, Mario was good to me.
Yeah.
He said, I endorsed Mario's son.
People around the country, Mario's Andrew's father, the late governor.
And so that was a name that they were familiar with. And mine was one that they had to learn. Mine was one that they hadn't heard of before. And what I was proud of is by the end of that primary, we won young black voters. We still have work to do with older black voters. And that's the focus of this general election, is making clear that when they're facing 3,500 instances of deed theft since 2015, we're going to create an Office of Deed Theft Prevention to actually ensure that older black New Yorkers are not being exploited simply out of a desire to finalize their will for their children.
Now, you have the support of many key New York Democrats, including the city controller, Brad Lander, State Attorney General Letitia James, numerous congressional Democrats, but you still have not received endorsement of two of the city's most powerful politicians, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. I know both men. I've worked with them on countless issues over the years. We may not align on every single thing, but I think we all can agree they sincerely care about the future of the party. Can you tell us if you think those endorsements are still to come, or why do you think they've been reluctant to back you up publicly until now?
You know, I have appreciated the conversations I've had with both of them and the ways in which that no matter when we're speaking or where we're speaking, what we're speaking about is affordability and New Yorkers. That's at the center of this. And one thing I've said is, absolutely, I welcome endorsements from anyone in this city and in this state. And yet our focus is on the partnership in governing to ensure we can actually deliver for those New Yorkers. Because what we have seen in the past is too often City Hall has been at war with Albany. And we've seen that especially under Andrew Cuomo's leadership in the state. What New Yorkers want is an understanding that we all have the same constituents. We all have to deliver for them together.
Now, I've down through the years, said and been involved in things that I've later said was misunderstood, and some things that I regretted. Mrs. Coretta Scott King told me, you got to watch language, got to watch what you say. Now, let's talk about anti-Semitism. New York City is the home of the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. The mayor must build a relationship, whoever the mayor becomes, trust in all communities of the city. The term globalize the intifada has become a flashpoint for Jewish New Yorkers who say they're concerned about how your views on the Israeli-Gaza conflict will influence how you govern the city. You said on Meet the Press in July, that's not language you would use, but you don't want to police the speech of others. But we both know words matter. The Department of Defense means something different than the Department of War. I've experienced this throughout my own civil rights career, and I've had to correct myself to deal with what people receive may not be what I meant. And words have consequences, and sometimes we need to examine our own positions to build unity. Has your personal views on the phrase of global intifada changed since you've been running for mayor? Do you understand those that see it in a more threatening way than saying, I'm just not going to police other people's language?
Yes, they have. And you know, when we won the primary election, I said on that stage that I know that millions of New Yorkers care deeply about what happens in Israel and Palestine, and I'm one of those New Yorkers. And I commit to reaching even further to understand disagreement to wrestle with the complexities of those differing viewpoints, because what this city deserves is a mayor that looks not only to represent the close to 600,000 New Yorkers that voted for me, but rather the 8.5 million people that call this city home. And in the meetings that I have had since that moment, I've met with Jewish elected officials, with rabbis, with community leaders, and there was one rabbi that spoke to me about how that phrase, for her, brought back memories of bus bombings in Haifa, of restaurant attacks in Jerusalem. And I knew that from what she was sharing with me that she had a fear, as she said, that that could come home to New York City. And so in having that conversation with her, I knew that the gap between the intent that I have heard some New Yorkers share with the use of that language of calling for the end of the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land was disconnected from the impact it was having in that same conversation I was having with that rabbi. And so I have said, after having that conversation, that this is language I would discourage.
Now, you've been running on the platform of affordability fixes for New Yorkers, like a rent freeze you mentioned, free buses, city-owned groceries that made you popular with some working New Yorkers, but not so popular with real estate developers and the financial class. You were the only mayoral candidate to march alongside Martin Luther King III and I on our march on Wall Street about DEI on last week as we call for economic justice for all New Yorkers and all Americans. But right now, the top 1% earners in the city pay 40% of the city's income taxes, according to the Empire Center for Public Policy. How do you bring these wealthy residents to the table as mayor, stop them from saying they're leaving, going to Florida? Because we need that tax revenue to pay for some of the things you're talking about. How do you pay for it if they're gone?
Well, the first thing I have to say is I was proud to be the only candidate for mayor at that march. And I was proud because some of the chants at that march, they were asking, is the dream alive?
Right.
Is Dr. King's dream still alive? And he asked the question decades ago, what good is having the right to sit at a lunch counter if you can't afford to buy a hamburger?
Right.
That's a question that New Yorkers are still wrestling with today in 2025. And so what I have put forward is a vision to make the most expensive city in the United States of America affordable. At a time when we have the wealthiest city, it is also one where 1 in 4 are living in poverty. And to your point, we have a number of New Yorkers who are doing quite well. The top 1% of New York City earns $1 million or more a year. And my vision is not one where they leave, it is one where they stay. It is
How do you get them to stay?
In part by showing them that asking them to pay more in taxes would increase even their quality of life. Because when you ask New Yorkers, what is it that is making them feel uneasy in this city? You often hear from them about the cleanliness of our city, the safety of our city, the affordability of our city. We are not asking to raise these taxes for the sake of it. We're asking so that we can actually make the slowest buses in the country fast and free, so that we can actually create a Department of Community Safety that would deploy dedicated teams of mental health outreach workers to the top 100 stations of the highest levels of mental health crises and homelessness. That relationship proving that that tax dollar leads to that investment, because we know that it's not just a fiscal policy that takes somebody from New York City to somewhere else. Because a lot of New Yorkers, if they leave, they go to California, another high-tax state. They go to New Jersey, another high-tax state. Many people say they might go to Florida, but I have seen and heard from many New Yorkers concern about this new elimination of vaccine mandates in Florida that makes them question whether they would ever want to live there.
Yeah. So you would raise the taxes, but you are telling them why. Raise the taxes for the rich.
For the top 1%, we'd raise their personal income tax by 2%. So that would be, if you make $1 million a year, $20,000 extra in taxes. And the point and my responsibility would be to deliver on that, to show them that it is a worthwhile investment.
We've heard rumblings in the recent few days that President Trump is looking for ways to entice Mayor Eric Adams to drop his independent campaign. Trump may be inspired by Democratic polling suggesting Andrew Cuomo could have a path to victory, but only if other candidates besides you and him drop out, including Curtis Sliwa. Are you concerned about a head-to-head matchup with the former governor who we are inviting to join the show next weekend? Who are you concerned about that? I had a breakfast with him Friday. We talked about issues where we agree, disagree. You and I talked very candidly about things. How concerned are you, two-part, about a Cuomo race singularly, and how concerned are you that the president is seeming to be involved in discussions about your race?
I am not concerned about a head-to-head matchup with Andrew Cuomo. For months in the primary, he said his dream opponent was me, and then we defeated him by 13 points with the most votes any primary winner has ever received in the history of this city. We will do the same thing again in November. What I am concerned about, however, is Donald Trump's interference with this race. We are seeing a president who wants to rob New Yorkers of the right to pick their own leaders. And what we are seeing amidst all of this is an acceptance of this fact, when we know, Rev, that acceptance is the antidote to justice. You have to actually be willing to name oppression for what it is, to name authoritarianism for what it is, and then fight back against it. And what we see in Donald Trump is he is using every single tool at his disposal to try and stop my candidacy. And he's doing that because he knows that I will actually deliver on what he campaigned on, a more affordable life for New Yorkers.
In one of your visits to National Action Network House of Justice, you gave credit to a lot of civil rights leaders for making it possible for you to run. How important is it for us to protect voting rights around the country? And how important is it to you, for people out of that tradition that had to fight, understand your candidacy?
It is incredibly important, because we know that it's the bedrock for so many freedoms. And yet what we are seeing is that it is under attack. And it is not incidentally under attack. It is intentionally and systematically under attack, because we see an administration that has no regard not only for the history of this country, the struggles of the people of this country, but also the promise of liberation and liberty in this country. And so I am committed to continuing the legacy that we have seen before us, because it's tempting in this language of politics to think of yourself as a first this or a first that. We are but one of many who are following in the footsteps of what has been laid out before us for decades. And I would say that, Rev, you have been helping to lead that same charge.
Thank you for that, and we'll leave it right there. I'm sure we'll be seeing you many more times. Many thanks to New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani, who has come in studio, not only come on the show, but come in studio.